Hello, thank you for tuning in. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 tips for Woodland ICM. Now, if you're into ICM photography or you want to get into ICM photography, you might want to check out the link up there as well for 5 normal ICM tips, or rather, you can apply the tips anywhere, let's be fair. But these tips here are really more Woodland. But that doesn't mean you can't apply the same tips elsewhere. It's just that I'm in the woods and these are the kind of things that are going to work here. So, tip number 1, and it's a kind of woodland tip anyway. If you're used to shooting in woodland, one of the things you'll probably try to do in woodland is keep the sky out of it as much as possible. And the reason you want to do that is because you create great big highlights up in the canopy and such, and in the distance, that are really difficult to kind of take your eye off of in the composition. It's very, very hard. Because your eye is always dragged to highlight. So you want to do exactly the same kind of thing in your ICM photography in woodland, unless obviously you're working in a way in which you know that you can control this, or indeed the highlights are part and parcel of the composition. But if you don't want that, you've got to be very careful. Here, for instance, let's start low and I'll go up. The image is mostly, it's not a good image, that must try again. If you're not already certain of this, ICM is very kind of hit and miss. Actually, a bonus tip, using a wider angle field of view in woodland for ICM really accentuates the problem of getting your highlights in. Let's try that. We'll come a little low and we'll try again. That last one's a good example of it. Because it's a wide shot, and indeed we probably want a wide shot to start with here, but we've got it's awkward. I think you look at the photo to see what I mean. Because it's a wide shot, we're accentuating the sheer gamut of brightness up there. Not that it's terribly bright, it's late in the day, and obviously this is an autumn day, so we're going to lose light fast. But the point remained, try to keep the sky out of it. And if that means putting a longer lens on, put a longer lens on. Looking in this direction now. Even worse, because we're picking up pinpricks of light through the canopy, which makes things doubly difficult. Tip number 2, go with the flow of your shapes. So again, these aren't hard and fast rules. They're not rules, they're tips. If you go against the shape, so I'm going to just zoom out a little here and go across a little sweeping movement there, it's very difficult to get a good idea of what it is you're looking at. If that's the effect that you're after, great, but going up and down is more pleasing. And I've just zoomed in again for these beech trees here. I'm not going to go up too far because I'm going to catch things. There's a pinprick of light over there. I hadn't seen it. It's awkward. You see, I'm going up and down because trees go up and down. That's not a bad one. Tip number 3. Compositions are still important. You might be kind of blurring the lines, so to speak, but it doesn't mean to say you want the lines in the wrong place. So the avenue of trees I've got here has a lady down there with her dog, and that's quite a nice one. She's got quite a way away now, so she's merely just a shape, but she's right in the centre of the light, so to speak. Not as a lot of light, but there's enough. You can see her moving around a little bit there. And the technique I'm using here is just a little bit of camera movement. It's really very small amount. And I'm going up and down in the same shot, which is half a second. So if the composition would work as a still photograph, one without the intentional camera movement, it's probably a good choice for ICM 2. And we've got 2 more people here. I've already mentioned the technique I've used here. We'll roll this into tip 4 because the movement here is up and down. That gives an image that's obviously dependent on movement at the start and ending in much the same place. So you're recording the same information twice but in 2 different directions, and it can give you a very interesting feel. So play with movement. Don't be afraid of going back on the same movement that you have. And as I said earlier, these are not hard and fast rules. It's not that you must do this, but it's a good idea to try these things so you can get some decent images up front. Tip number 5. It may seem blindingly obvious, but then again, it may not, because ordinarily we leave this feature on in our camera, but most modern cameras have got anti-shake stabilization. You're trying to move the camera. You want it to capture that, so turn it off. It's really important that you turn it off. Now, if you're creating great big sweeping movement, it's not that important. But here, I'm only going to create a really, really small movement, and therefore I absolutely do not want the image stabilization on, because it's going to counteract what I'm trying to do. Well, I hope you found those tips useful. If you have, please click the like button appearing just over here. There's some other videos which you may also find useful, some more tips on some ICM and also some Woodland tips as well. Go check those out. We'll see you soon.